You're listening to Thrive, where every week we have meaningful conversations with incredible women like you, packed with practical tips and sisterly advice to bring you from a life of simply surviving to thriving. It's personal development for the everyday gal who is done with coasting through her days, done with feeling like she's missing out on the deeper meaning of her own life, and done with mediocrity once and for all. Because it's not enough to simply survive. You deserve to thrive. I'm your host, Erica Gwynn, and I'm ready to thrive together. Here's today's episode. Welcome back to Thrive. Super stoked because we have got not just myself, but we have got literally all of Team Thrive, Team CUR, Team the dream team here, all of us behind the mics for this is basically the episode about making friends. We put our heads together and we were like, you know what? Doesn't get talked about all that much is making friends as a grown-up and how weird and awkward and strange it can feel basically all of the time. Or maybe that's just for us. Maybe some people are already like thriving in their groove, which is great. But we haven't had an episode on friendship in a hot sec. Actually, I think it was all the way back episode 105 with Amy Weatherly and Jess Johnston might have been our last official dedicated friendship episode. So we're pretty stoked about this. So we've got Sarah and we have got Taylor. You guys can say hey.
Hey.
Hey. And before we dive in, we have to mention this because this is a recent little passion project that we have launched, which is our Facebook group, The Crowd. So if you are looking for some new girlfriends right off the bat and you want to be a part of a community of like-minded women who maybe right off the bat have something in common with you, like also listen to, the Thrive podcast or hang out with Coming Up Roses, might I recommend joining The Crowd. It is our Coming Up Roses crowd. Get it? The Crowd. And Thrive is right in there on the fun, and we're all thriving together. So consider this your official invite to come hang. We'll put the link to join in the show notes below, but essentially all are welcome. It is a safe space. What's said in the crowd stays in the crowd. It's like Vegas. And really, after something like a decade on the internet, I just wanted a space to connect you all to each other instead of just talking to me all the time, because I don't know everything and I haven't been everywhere and I don't have all of the recommendations or answers. So hopefully you can get even more of what you need to thrive over in the crowd, be that vacation recommendations or baby name inspo, what to wear for your interview or your date night, the next book for your summer reading list, you name it. So, anywho, here we are, chatting friendships. And we're basically kicking it off by setting the tone with that meme that says that Jesus' real miracle is that he had 12 friends in his 30s.
Truth. That seems like a big feat to have 12 friends in your 30s.
When you think about it, you're just like, wow, wait, that actually is really impressive. You go, Jesus.
You start like recreating in your brain, like, all right, where's my last supper table and who's sitting there? And you're like, I got 4. What do I do now? Got some empty seats. It's fine.
I know, right? Okay, so can we kick off with everyone sharing kind of like what the evolution of friendship has looked like for you into adulthood? Because I think a lot of people end up in this same position that we have all been in or are in, where your circle like slowly dwindles the older you get, and there's pros and there's cons, but there's moments regardless where you find yourself being like, oh, is this normal? Like, am I a loner now, or am I supposed to be having more friends, or am I doing it right, or am I doing it wrong, or like now all of a sudden it's weird? So what has friendship looked like for you through the years?
I'll start. So I'm Sarah. I'm a mom of 2 kiddos. And I think I've seen a lot of change after having kids, because we had kids. We were like the first ones in our friend group, first ones in our family, to have kids. And that can be really isolating because your time isn't really your own, especially when you have littles and you're kind of in this weird, like, cool, I can do stuff until like 6:30. And then like everything has to stop because my baby must go to bed so that we can function tomorrow. And that's limiting, and it feels really isolating unless you have other people that are going through that phase together. And so I think for me, like, that's kind of where I saw like a big change in friendship, because when you first have kids, you feel very much on an island, and you have to be like super intentional about staying in touch with people, and you know, making sure that communication is going two ways. And then, you know, as your kids get older, you get in this weird phase. Like when my two went to daycare, they'd like come home and be like, I want to go on a play date with so-and-so to like their house. And you're like, I don't know that child's family. Like so you have to do like really awkward things, being like, hi, I'm so-and-so's mom, and can we get a coffee so we can like kind of be friends? I don't know. And it's like, you're in elementary school all over again, trying to figure out like how to make friends on the playground. So yeah, it's weird watching that process change, and then finding those people in the end that get it and get you, and that you can text weird memes about parenting back and forth to each other at weird hours when you're, you know, taking care of kids. And those are the people that you know are going to be around for the long haul.
Yeah. I feel like you and I have talked about this too, offline, where we were both kind of like the first ones in our respective friend groups to have babies.
Yeah.
Which like puts you automatically in a weird bubble where everyone else who's a mom at that age is older than you. Or like, so like your original friend group or like your original circle might all be one age. But that if you start hanging out with other people around you in your neighborhood or whoever who are moms, they're all a little bit older. So you're either like the too young mom of the group, or you're like the too old, too much of an adult like friend in your old group, and all of a sudden you're in this weird in between of like, wait, but my kids are the oldest in this situation, but I'm the youngest in this situation, and neither one feels like I'm fully fitting in. And it's so strange.
Yeah, I think I learned a lot about like how it's okay to have friends for phases.
Yeah.
Like you can have friends in like when your child is in daycare, like you can have really good friends that are your kids' friends, and then that's your community. And then when your kid leaves that daycare and goes to elementary school, like it's okay if some friendships change. You know, like it's okay for friendships to go through phases of, you know, I'm really, really close to this person. Okay, this life event, you know, I had a baby or they had a kid or they moved or whatever, you know, it's okay for those things to change friendships. And that's not, I used to think that like something was wrong. Like, oh my gosh, I like totally failed as a human being because I've lost touch with this person. And I'm like, we all go through stuff and life changes us, and it's okay to not have the same, you know, best friend from 5th grade to now.
Well, there's that saying, friends can be in your life, or not even just friends, people in general, for a reason or a season.
Yeah.
And that fits here. And sometimes I think we put pressure on ourselves to have some sort of complicated conversation for closure. If you feel a door kind of closing, where you're like, oh, do we have to talk about it that we're not as close? Or like, do we have to have this awkward conversation of like, did I do something? Or what happened? And sometimes that's just it's not needed, because it's just, you're right. Like, it's just, sometimes it ran its course and it wasn't meant to be the forever thing. And it didn't necessarily have a super strong reason beyond it was, I don't want to say convenient, because but sometimes it is just like a friendship of convenience. Yeah, it's proximity. It's like what friendships are when they're in high school and they're the kids that you see every single day. Or it's a season, like you said, of like your kids are in school at the same time, or like in the same daycare program or library program, or like whatever it is. So you're there, and then all of a sudden you're not. What about you, Taylor? Because you don't have children yet, so you have like a different perspective here.
Yes, no, not yet, but I also think we are going to be in a similar boat where we are the first of, or at least my closest friends, to have kids. Some I know don't even really want kids. So yeah, I think we'll end up being in a similar position. But yeah, friendships. That is something I've been struggling with a lot lately, or just trying to learn the lesson you were both talking about just now, that it is okay for friendships to come and go, and it's not necessarily always your fault. So for reference, I am 30. I just turned 30. So that comes with a whole other wave of emotions. But I grew up in theater and dance and even went to school for it. So to me, being a part of a community has always been something that I've needed in my life. And I feel like that's where I've gotten most of my friendships from. But something I've struggled with is always being the one to reach out friendships. And if I'm not immediately a part of that community at a point in time, that I'm not thought of or being invited to or being reached out to. So I'm at a point in my life where I feel like I've been slowly distancing from my college friends. It's been a long enough period of time, plus the few years where we were all staying at home. So that I feel like that escalated that or quickened that process. So yeah, I feel like I've been growing apart from some of my friends. And I also just got married recently, and the whole bridesmaid thing is another other thing, like talking about who's sitting at the Last Supper table. That's what came to mind of like who's going to be bridesmaid. And my husband jokes that he doesn't have any friends. So we didn't have the like traditional bridesmaids and groomsmen. I had girls get ready with me. So I didn't have to completely decide or feel like I was excluding people. And so that was also a tough thing to go through. So in terms of finding new friends, we've been talking about it a lot lately, my husband and I, and we kind of don't know where to start other than at church, just because it is a community of like-minded people to find friends. But yeah, we're kind of just in that limbo. I feel like we will meet new people when we have kids and our friends' and their parents and all of that. But right now we're kind of just, I don't know, in limbo of where we fit in and where we can find friends that relate and all that jazz.
Honestly, I love that you said that though, because I feel like that's so real, where we have these moments as grownups when as kids, we probably looked at grownups and thought that everybody had it all together and has their circles and everything is figured out. And like, you are thriving. You are like out there winning the game at life. And you've got all of your besties we just have these visions and dreams of like your besties from elementary school. They're now your lifelong diehards. And that's simply not true for many of us. So I love the fact that that you and your husband can just honestly and vulnerably be like, listen, we don't really have a ton of friends right now and we're looking for it. We're like open and available, because I think a lot of people end up in that space where you're just kind of like, okay, we're living our lives. It's not like we're trying to not have friends or going out of our way to do something, but it's just things get weird and people live their lives. And then you're kind of like, what do we do? Like put an ad on Craigslist for friends? Like how does this work? Because you don't have the same sort of like natural built-in opportunities that you might have had in college, in high school, whatever. And things are changing and there's different stages involved and there's like all different interests and values and much deeper things that come into play with friendships that you would want to invest time in for the long haul at this point in life, where I'm like, Jamie and I joke about this all the time. We're like, we don't have time for a lot of friends. So like if we're only going to have a few select people if we've got like one spot on the calendar a month, that's like our friendship date box on the calendar, who's filling that box? And if it's like, we don't want to throw it away on like random people that are just passing by for whatever. It's like, we want to have quality friendships with people who we totally vibe with and relate to and are on the same page with. And it's like, you almost need to like accept applications for friendships.
One thing you said, Taylor, that I think you kind of hit on is like finding friendships and communities with like-minded people. And that's something that my husband and I have talked a lot about lately. So my husband's introverted and I am not. And so it adds another dynamic because he jokes.
Ooh, yeah.
We were talking to some friends one time and they said, oh, I was just having lunch with someone today. And they said that, they were cleaning out their calendars and their schedules and they didn't have time for any new friends. And the person who said that and I were both like, oh, I can't imagine ever feeling that way. And my husband and our other friend who are both introverts looking at each other, they're like, no, that tracks. I don't have time for new people. Like I'm good. I got my friends. I'm good. So it's funny being in that balance of like one person in the partnership is, really craving people and one person is really kind of like good. But we've found that, like you said, finding that community that has people with similar interests at like an activity or like something that's kind of a built-in hangout. So we watch English Premier League soccer. We have a team and our team has a club and we have a supporters club and we go watch soccer together on Saturday mornings. And
that's so cute.
Oh, it's a blast. We have fun. And like our kids run around and play with other kids that are there to watch the game. And we're all there for each other. And we know that we're always going to see each other August through May, every Saturday or Sunday. And we all check in on each other. And it's become like much more of a community than I think we thought it would be. You think like, oh, that's so cute. You're going to watch a game on TV that's in a different country, but it's really become friendships. And because we have an activity that we know we're going to see each other at this thing. And I mean, our church is like that too. Like you have an activity that you're going to see a certain amount of people every week or every, 2 weeks at a small group or whatever it is. And I think there's a huge value in finding something like that where it's like, you don't have an excuse because it's just built into your routine. Every Sunday you're going to go to Sunday school and you're going to see these same people. And so you kind of are held accountable to that like automatic hangout without really having to like take up a Saturday night for a double date that, could go to be something else on your calendar,
I love that. We used to have a game, like a group game night on the calendar, which was the same sort of thing. And it only started falling apart once we stopped having it be a regular thing on the calendar. Granted, it was because people were having babies and it like real life was just getting a little complicated to maintain that many people. But to echo what you said, Sarah, like it really was the most successful when it was, okay, it's once a month, it's this Saturday of the month, or it's this whatever of the month, and we'll just rotate houses. And that is the date. And it works because you don't even have to think about planning. You just have to think about like who's bringing what dip and what drink combination, and like you're good to go.
Yeah, like finding unconventional times to hang out. Like I'm a huge fan of like a lunch date during a busy day. Like I don't like giving my nights away because I have kids and I have a husband and I want to do things around my house, but like I can block out an hour to go grab lunch with a friend and it's easier because my kids are at school or whatever. And so I think finding like less common times to like go do something, even if it's just like going for a walk or something like that after you drop a kid off at daycare or after you knock out your first email check in the day saying, hey, let's go meet at a park and walk for 30 minutes and catch up. Finding those times that aren't like huge 3-hour dinners and drinks and, whatever, because time is a commodity and you only have so much of it during a week now that we're all grown-ups with lives and jobs and people.
For sure. I think in terms of maintaining some maybe older friendships or long distance friendships, especially because I know both of those are very relevant in my own life. Something that a lot of my girlfriends and I will do is kind of like multitasking a mindless task. This is funny because I know we literally just had a Thrive episode that mentioned this not too long ago. So this is like coming back to me, but it's
Marisa,
it worked.
Right?
Yes, exactly. But you're literally like having a conversation on FaceTime or whatever while you are doing some mindless task that has to get done. So it's really just trying to be like, you are still giving your girlfriend your full attention, but you're also getting something done around your house. Like it might be like you're folding laundry at the same time. So you set up your FaceTime and you have your earbuds in and you're chit-chatting while you're both folding your kids' clothes. Or like while some of my girlfriends and I will do this while we're driving to different apartments. Like we all have the little phone stand thing and we'll smack our phone magnetic case, whatever, on the thing so that we can like safely drive and like talk on the phone while we're driving or something. And that's like a really solid way to keep in touch without it feeling like it's another thing on a to-do list or like it's a chore or something that's going to take up time that you just feel like you don't have to give once your bucket is poured out at the end of the day.
How do you deal with if you're the only person making that phone call, or if you're the person that initiates all the time?
I love this. I love that this is a thing because this is so real. Here's a question back for you. Are you also an empath?
I have no idea. I don't think so. I know
just
LJ.
like,
I know my husband is, LJ is, but I don't think I am.
Okay. I feel like I don't know 100% if I am, but I feel like it's one of those things where like when you feel friendship very deeply, there's like more sensitivity to this, I think. Anyway,
because I might just be more sensitive to knowing that I'm the one, or feeling that I'm the one that always reaches out, or I'm always the one that makes the plans. And if I don't do it, they don't happen. But I think about the other person.
Yeah, I've been that person too, where I feel like I'm always the one making the phone call. And I kind of had to say, like, okay, if I stopped making phone calls and that friendship fizzled, like, would I be sad? And if I am sad, then okay, for this phase, I'm going to be that person. I'm going to be the one to reach out. And because I'd rather have that person stay in my life and not lose them, even if I'm the one that's like, ugh, I'm always the one picking up the phone, or I'm always the one asking, hey, let's go get coffee or whatever. And I think at some point too, like, it will turn, because I think about friendships that I've had where I felt that way. And now I'm like, oh, we're still really good friends. And I don't feel that way anymore. Like, it kind of evened out a little bit. Like, I think it's almost people getting used to the normalcy of having friends as adults. Again, like, when you're a kid, you naturally see your friends at certain things. You see them at school, you see them. And so nobody had to really like make plans necessarily, like you knew you were going to see your friend in homeroom the next morning. So it wasn't like you had to be like, oh, we have to talk on this day because it's my only free night. Like, you were going to see them in school. Whereas like now we're all kind of getting used to, oh, like if we don't make plans, it doesn't happen. Like if I don't make an effort, like that friendship will fade. So yeah, I think some of it is like, is that okay for a season? Like, is it worth it being that person if it means staying close to that person, having that person in your life, or people?
I also really like the idea that Sarah just gave of intentionally pausing your communication to someone, your attempts, just to see what happens. Because I know I'm also the exact same way, where I've often felt that I was the one having to reach out to make things happen. My mom has also been the same way her entire life. We talk about this often now as two very much grown-ups, where we're like, man, sometimes I just wish people would, like, other people would reach out first. And like, we just kind of, and you kind of really have to assess, is that person like, why are you the one reaching out all the time? And if it's because the other person just isn't prioritizing you the way that you're prioritizing them, I think sometimes you do just get to a point in life where you're like, you know what? If I'm that much of if I'm that low on your priority list, but you're that high on mine, maybe I need to lower my expectations a little bit of what this friendship is, and maybe not reach out as much, and then you could see how they respond, see if they notice even. I've personally had friendships that completely fizzled out when I stopped reaching out. And that sucks in the moment. Like, that really is a blow to the face. Especially, I had that happen with a friendship that was like a decade old that I thought was going to be a lifelong friend. And that was a very tough pill to swallow and a tough period for me to kind of grieve the friendship, because I was like, oh, I guess this is kind of over. Like, I guess this is not what I thought it would be. But I would much rather than open up that space on my calendar, but also just in my heart and in my brain, for people who are going to put the same effort, care, intention, whatever, into me as I'm willing to put into them. And I think reframing it like that in my mind helped a lot, because I was like, you know what? I'm a good friend, and I'm there for people, and I am willing to go out for people. And like, if I'm willing to do that, I deserve that in return. And you deserve people who are the same kind of friend to you that you are to them. So if you are going out of your way always to be a good friend for these people and you just don't feel like that's fully being reciprocated, that's just something to think about. I think that's different though than if it's something where you think that they genuinely are a really, really good friend, but maybe it's just a difference in communication styles because some people just suck at texting, or some people just suck at making plans, or some people are like all of the memes on Instagram where they're like, "Ooh, if you say you want to cancel plans," I'm like, "Absolutely yes, let's not have any plans," because that is like also a phase. So I would say assess whether it's the friendship as a whole versus maybe a communication issue or the style of communication where if you address it to them and bring it up and be like, "Hey, like I kind of noticed I'm always I'm always the one making plans here. Like I don't want to be bothering you or anything. Is something up?" Or like literally just calling it out to light. That I think sometimes is worth it too.
Yeah, and I
Just
think finding
give us their numbers. We'll find out for you.
we got you. We'll ask the questions.
We'll start a group text. Hey,
Oh gosh.
heard you're messing with our girl.
I will say though that I've also been in a very busy season of my life and just doing too much. And at my birthday party recently, because I was training for a marathon, which takes a lot of time, a lot more time than I think any of my closest friends really realized until I pulled up my stats of how many hours I was running. And then they're like, oh. So I will say that I have been in a busy season of my life between wedding planning and then training for a marathon and working all the time. So I know I've been a little distant myself too. So it's not just all them, but
give yourself grace.
Juggle it all. Yeah.
Yeah. Give yourself grace, because I will say too, like I have some girlfriends who will be the first ones to reach out all the time. And even if I'm not in the best season myself in terms of my own proactivity in reaching out in friendship, I still notice what they're doing. I still very much notice like, ooh, she is like there for me. She's making an effort. She always will text me. She's always thinking of me. So even if I might end up feeling bad then, where I'm like, okay, mental note to self, like check in on her back because she's so near and dear. So like even if there is a period of time where you find yourself being like, man, is anyone thinking of me? Like have some faith knowing that there are probably people who are totally thinking of you and might even be mentally kind of like down on themselves, like, oh man, Taylor's totally killing it as a friend and I'm sucking right now for whatever reason. So just give it a little bit of grace and space just to see if it figures itself out in that sense, because they might just be doing their own thing and super busy with all of their own stuff, like you said, but just internalizing that you're a really good friend. And then when their life gets a little less chaotic or hectic, they reach out and they say, oh my gosh, sorry, I haven't answered your text in 5 months. Like life has happened. So here we are. Can we please go get coffee and catch up? And then you can like pick up where you left off.
Yeah. Those are the best friends that you can go for however many months or years of not seeing each other. And then it's just like it was yesterday.
Exactly. And sometimes like checking in different ways is the way to kind of assess that. Like just staying in touch on social media really quick, or even just sometimes shooting those quick texts, not to try to make plans, but just to be like, hey, I just wanted you to know, like, I'm thinking of you today and I hope you have a great day. Like, I miss you, sending you so many good vibes. I saw your cute picture of you and your husband on your trip, or like I saw your cute baby picture, or I saw whatever, and I just love you, miss you, sending you all the good vibes. Like sometimes that's enough to just like put some drops in the bucket of like you're in maintenance mode and you're both on your separate paths right now, but you still care about each other and they will cross again. Also, going off of the comment you had earlier about bridesmaids. So this is what I've been married almost 7 years. And I was talking to one of my best friends about this the other day because she's also been married the same amount of time. and we were talking about our bridal parties and like what they would look like if we got married today versus back when we did get married. And I've talked to Jamie about this before, and we've all said like there might be one or two people that would still be there, and otherwise it would look completely different. And I don't know if that might be because like neither my husband or I had like, we had some siblings involved, but like it wasn't as much family. It was really kind of like friends that were up there. But like we were like, man, at the time we all thought that these were kind of like our forever friends and our forever people. But even in just the 7 years since getting married, we would have a totally different situation now. And a lot of those friendships are kind of deeper, or they're more significant, or they're just like longer term, like they're like our people. Like
Yeah.
our diehard people now. Like if we did a 10-year vow renewal, it would be like those are the people that would probably be the ones that are like gonna be in our life for the next 30 years, not just the 5 years after the wedding or whatever like that. So
Yeah. So we did that. We did my husband and I have been married for 12 years. 2 years ago, we did a 10-year vow renewal. And it was really cool looking around the room and seeing some of the same people that were there the first time or were in our bridal party, 10 years before. But it was also really cool seeing the people that weren't there the first time because we didn't know them. It was cool being like, oh my gosh, like we have all these friends in our lives that we had no idea 10 years ago when we got married that they were going to be in our lives and change our lives. And it was also cool to see someone that was at our wedding the first time, whose now husband was an usher in our wedding, but we weren't really good friends. She was my person that stood up with me at our vow renewal because she's now my best friend. And it was cool looking back and being like, oh, wow, like life changes, but some things are constant and deepen. Some friendships deepen and some friendships come out of nowhere and, end up being some of your most amazing friends that, you never saw coming 10 years before. So we had a very similar experience because we looked back at old wedding pictures and we were like, oh, that's really weird to think about. Like just the totally different crowd and totally different people that were around. But then the people that are still there and finding value in like those lifelong friendships that were there the first time and got to celebrate with us 10 years later.
For those ones that deepened, what do you think was the most significant factor in helping those friendships really flourish and thrive? Because I feel like that's kind of like where the key to alignment has to happen, where like both people, you meet, you click, or you've been in each other's lives and you click, but something has to kind of like re-spark it or rekindle it enough where even if you're not in the exact same life stage, it just kind of works, where like you naturally can become close again or closer, whatever state it gets to.
Yeah, I think there was definitely some of like, we got closer after we both had kids. And so like some of our friendships that we had before kids that kind of like ebbed and flowed in our early marriage days, like when we had kids and they had kids, it was like, ooh, we all are back in the same arena again. Like, let's figure this out together. And I also think I think for me, it's been a lot of understanding that like friendship doesn't always have to mean 4-hour long, in-depth heart to heart conversations where everybody laughs, cries, and leaves changed. Like, it doesn't have to be that every single time. Like,
Yes.
I have friends that like we text daily, but like our texts are usually like one of us sending the other person a meme on Instagram and then the other person sending the other person a text about something else funny. Like it's like all the different communication methods in one. Or like I have a friend who lives, Erica, you mentioned like long distance friends. I have a friend who lives literally on the opposite side of the country from me, and we mail books back and forth. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really fun because like one of us will buy a book, we'll read it. If we like it, we'll send it to the other person. And then that person has like, we then have a conversation to have because we've been like, hey, we're living in two very different places and we have time zone differences and craziness. But like we can shoot a text of like, oh my gosh, I just finished that book and it was crazy. And here's the thing I loved. And, understanding that communication or like that the style of friendship can change over time to keep that like going, even when you're in different phases, or even when you're in different places, or in different, you know, whatever circumstances of life, understanding that friendship doesn't have to look the exact same as it did before, and it doesn't make you not friends now just because it looks different.
Yeah, that's good. I do buddy reads with some of my girlfriends. We don't mail physical books back and forth, but I love the idea of that. We'll just like try to start the book at the same time and then almost have like a tiny little book club together where we're just like, all right, what did you think about it? What did you think about it? And we'll kind of carry on that way. And that's always, you're right. It's like having a built-in conversation starter is very, very helpful. And it kind of helps you stay creative and fresh and fun in your friendship instead of just being like, how's your job? How's your marriage? Just like the basic go-tos. It gives you something that's like a little fun to look forward to, which who doesn't want that?
Yeah. Like a bachelor fantasy league.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. No, actually, Taylor, I feel like that's how isn't that like kind of how we met on Instagram? Like, I feel like you were messaging a lot every time The Bachelor was on. We would end up messaging on Instagram. Like, are you watching? Or like, what do you think about this person or whatever? Like, that's a real thing. Like, if there's some sort of common interest there, then that easily starts being a gateway for deeper conversation on other things with people. Like,
yeah,
leave it to The Bachelor, bringing people together. Oh my gosh, it's so true. Where have you had the most success making new friends as a grown-up, and what does what is like your ideal relationship maintenance look like, if that makes sense? You know how people will be like, oh, I just always laugh when I see like all the articles when people are like, go to the gym, go to, you know, this store.
It's like dating all over again. Like,
right. And you're just kind of like,
that.
I see that all the time, and people laugh because you're like, okay, but if you're in like an organized workout class, that's one thing. But I don't know many people who are like going to the gym and being like sweaty and gross and then being like, what a perfect time to find my new lifelong friend. Like, so I'm always curious about like where or what you like feel is a little bit more successful, and or what that sort of relationship maintenance looks like. Even, I know, Taylor, you mentioned earlier, like you're the one that will reach out and like do kind of the maintenance work more on your own. But ideally, if it's not always you doing the outreach, what do you think like ideally relationship maintenance kind of looks like? Obviously it's different for every relationship, but
I think finding friends, Taylor said it earlier, and we've talked about it a little bit, of finding a community that then grows into friends, whether it's church, whether it's, you know, some common interest hobby group, whether it's a running club, whether it's something that is something you actually like doing, and then other people also like doing. It's like you then have an activity where if you're like struggling with what do I do with new friends, it's like, oh, well, we met running, or we met doing this thing. Because that's how, like I said, like I've met a lot of friends through our Liverpool supporters club, and we watch soccer together, and we also then text about other things and hang out off of soccer games. And, you know, and it sounds so silly to say, but it's like, I now have 3 or 4 really close friends that we've walked through hard things together because we met watching soccer. And we've walked through adoptions and surgeries and kids going to college. Like, we've walked through those big life moments. And I'm like, 5-6 years ago, before we really started watching soccer, we didn't have these people. And now they're people that we see consistently. And so I'm finding like being open to friendships that come across in weird ways, and not being scared to be like, hey, we should go have lunch, random person that I've just met 3 times by going to this running group. Or I've seen at church, they've sat in front of me at church 5 times and I know their first name, and not being afraid to say like, hey, we go to church together, we should go grab coffee. Because it does feel weird, but like, I don't know, you watch kids on a playground and they don't have any of that fear of like introducing themselves. Like, we were in a different state a couple years ago, and when we got home, and my kids like played on the playground with some kids that also happened to be in a different state. Like, we were not close by home. And when we came home, I was talking to my son about going back to school, and he was like, well, I already have friends. And I was like, oh, buddy, like, what are your friends' names? He goes, remember that kid that I played with on that playground while we were traveling? Like, that's my friend. And I'm like, okay, you like played with him for an hour? Like, that's not like, but that's how kids think of his friendships. They're like, they're super excited about him and they don't feel weird being like, do you want to go to the swings from the slide? Like, but I think when you're a grown up, you feel weird being the one to be like, hey, we should go do something and talk. Like that just feels weird, but it then grows into really cool things because you had the guts to say like, hey, I'm in a phase where I need a friend and you're here, so let's be friends.
You know what? I freaking love that because you're absolutely right. Like we overthink so much once we're grown-ups. And granted, it's because so many of us have been jaded and have been bullied and have had a nice long list of like relational trauma that's brought us to where we are now with meeting other people. Or, you know, it's just like life at this point. But I always laugh because Liv is the exact same way. And she, anytime we go anywhere, her first thing is, Mommy, can I make friends? Like, we don't even have to have left the car. She doesn't even know if there is a single kid, even remotely her height, at the same place. And she'll be like, but can I make friends? And she'll go up to, we just had to have a talk with her the other day because she was going up to kids at the pool and she'll get right in their face and be like, hi, do you want to be my best friend forever? And we're like, oh, honey, that's like a little intense. Like, maybe just ask them if they want to play for like, just do you want to play with me? That one works too. But like they have no fear and no qualms about just being like, hey, here's who I am. Do you want to hang out with me? And what I love is like this happened to Liv the other day where my parents witnessed it and I did not see it. And they told me about it after. And they said, Liv went up to a little girl somewhere and was like, do you want to play with me? And I think the girl was clearly a little bit older than her, like maybe 6-ish and Liv's 4. And the girl kind of like up and down to her and like knew she was younger, but like was like, sure, I'll play with you. And like was thankfully forever was very kind. So Liv was playing with her. And then another little girl who actually seemed around Liv's height came over, but had a little bit of sass where she was like, you can't play with her. She's my friend. And my mom said she just kind of was watching the situation to be like, what's Liv going to do? How is this going to unfold? And Liv just like without missing a beat looked at her and said, actually, she can have more than one friend. We can both be friends with her. And like wasn't phased by the fact that this person just like totally gave this little kid just like sassed up and down. I was like, dang, you know what? I love that. And her confidence was not faltered. And it was the very next day where she was running up to people going, hi, do you want to be my friend forever? So it's like we internalize everything as like a permanent something or a reflection of our character or like just something bigger than it is. And I feel like if we go back to basics on like what do we need in this season for ourselves and what do our closest people need in this season for themselves, how can we align? And is this a season where we are looking just for like fun friends to do something with on a weekend? Or is this a season where we need some like deep soul sisters that we got to be building that we want to be in our lives for a decade or through a lot of other hard things, and looking at each relationship as it comes and kind of assessing as it goes naturally with like, okay, is this the kind of friend where we're just like a quick coffee, whatever, small talk, preschool pickup, hi and bye kind of friends? Or are these the few diehards that we have the time and the mental capacity to really invest in mutually? You know, that's where we start thinking deeper about it. But like for those initial meetings, just taking it back to our good old days as a kid when you just run up to people and you're like, hey, I think you're super cool. Actually, okay, this is like really long-winded, but some of my closest girlfriends now that are long distance who I've met on the internet, come to think of it, literally started off because we messaged each other like on Instagram and straight up were like, hey, I think you're super cool. Like, can we be friends? And that was literally how the friendship started. And like, it's like 7 years later, have seen each other across the country, like through kids, whatever. And it all started because someone was willing to just put themselves out there and and just be like, hey, like, I love your vibe. Can we be friends? How do you feel? How do you feel about that?
But how do you make the deeper friendships? Or how do you, because you're like, hi, can we be friends? But how does that grow organically? Or is that like, how does that develop into a friendship? Because I will say, I feel like I haven't met a new friend in a long time. I feel like most of my friends or acquaintances come from running groups or like workout groups as of late. But they're just that too. Like I would love for some of those to become deeper, but I know I'll see them regularly. So it doesn't need to evolve into much. Or how do you grow friendship?
Yeah, I think at least for the people in my head immediately when I said that, it kind of came with, I would say you say that to people when you have an understanding that you are willing to do some initial legwork to get it off the ground. And you say that to people not just randomly, but when you truly sense that there is a vibe there that could be something more. Like I think of it as, I think I first heard this phrase from like Anne of Green Gables back in the day, kindred spirits, where like you say that to people who you sense a kindred spirit in, where you just, you know, these people where like you see them, you could see them out and about and not even have a conversation with them. And you're like, I would be friends with her. Like we have a same vibe, or like we have their warmth matches yours, or like you just kind of get the vibe where you know you would hit it off. Literally like dating, like when you see someone and you're like, would totally not date him, but like would totally date him. Same sort of thing where I'm like, I would only say that to someone who I know right off the bat from an initial vibe that there would be a vibe there, that we would be all, like friendship chemistry, where I'm like, there's friendship chemistry here. And then I would say that to someone prepared to do a little bit of initial legwork. And like, if they're like, yes, absolutely, you kind of got to jump on that so it doesn't become awkward and stale. So like jump on it in the sense of, awesome, let's set up a coffee date, or like, let's set up something so that you have some momentum. And then you can kind of see if the chemistry is in fact there and mutual. And hopefully at that point, you would be able to kind of like take it a little step further, where maybe they're like asking for your number, or they're wanting to make another plan, or you get like little by little vibes the same way you would in like the initial stages of dating someone.
I'm gonna say it's just like dating, which
it's literally just like dating.
Goodness.
No, but that, I think one of the biggest keys with that though is creating momentum. Like if you say it and they're like, yeah, sounds great, and then you just let it go, that now it's awkward for everybody.
Yeah. I feel like that's what happens all the time, is that, yes, let's do this. And then actions or plans aren't made in that moment. And then it's just a passing thought. But.
Exactly. And then I think it just doesn't get momentum, because then both parties probably feel a little awkward and then are like, oh, wait, because they might be thinking like, oh, was she not serious? Like, did she just say that to say that? Did she say that to everybody? Like they might be overthinking it too. So I think the biggest key is just doing something about it right then in the moment and being like, amazing, love this, let's do something. Like, how do you feel about XYZ, and making it like a really low key, easy kind of thing where you could get a read on the mutual vibe pretty quickly. And then I feel like if it's mutual like that, then it can kind of start to, you'll sense like the direction that it's going. If this is going to be like a soul sister vibe, or if this is going to be, we stay in touch every so often, or we support each other more from afar, or like whatever the case might be. Sarah, do you agree with that, or would you add something different?
Yeah. No, I think that sounds really, really true. And I think too, like being willing when you're in that phase of, I want to make friends and I need friends, being willing to be like vulnerable. And that's really uncomfortable, because it's like a very fine line between like, I don't need to like vomit my whole life story to you, but also like being willing to say like, okay, if I went on that coffee date, I think that was really fun, we really hit it off, we have very similar backgrounds, or we're both newly married, and so we've got lots to figure out in that realm, or whatever it is, being willing to like take it a step further by like sharing something of your story that connects with them, or finding something that they say to be like, oh, I've experienced that too, or I felt that too, and being willing to like baby step towards a deeper place, because it is hard when you do feel like it's very easy to feel like you have a bunch of shallow, like surfacey friendships of like, we talk, but it's like about these 3 things and then that's it, versus like, I have people that, if I say something, they can read between the lines and be like, ooh, you need a follow-up phone call, you know? And so kind of baby stepping your way into that by being willing to be vulnerable in a way that's comfortable and appropriate, but like finding ways that you can share parts of yourself and parts of what you're passionate about or what you care about or what makes you you, and using that to connect with them, because people respond well to that, because then people feel comfortable being vulnerable back. And then that friendship goes deeper because everybody is kind of opening slowly into a place of deeper friendship.
Yeah. I love that advice. And also think it's important to note that you can have different friends for different things. I think we probably hit on that earlier already.
Yeah.
But that's like not every friend is like the diehard friend that knows every detail about your life and your deep things. Like, I'm like, there might be two or three that get that like depth. And then there's like the next level of quasi depth, or like you kind of have like the different levels of the depth that you're going with people or the things that you're doing. And then people have room to kind of float on the scale, but you don't need to put pressure on yourself, I don't think, to be finding like you're not messaging people, hey, awesome vibe, let's be friends, with the intention of them being like your soul sister at your wedding, 10-year wedding vow renewal 10 years from now. Like that will be like the TBD naturally as it comes, as it flows crowd. But at least for the initial vibe check, I'm a fan.
And you said a key word, at least for me in my life, that you said for the first time this whole call, I think, and it was overthinking, which we all know I tend to do a lot.
Taylor's the queen of overthinking. I'll give you that crown, girl.
Yes.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You overthink though because you care. Like you're someone who cares a lot. And that's the thing. It's not like it's a bad thing or a character flaw or something like that. Like it's just something that it's good to be aware of, I think, because it can impact things like friendship or work or whatever. But like it's not, that's why I say like just think of it like when you're 4 years old on the playground, and like if you know you're overthinking it, then sometimes you just gotta hit this end. And my mom and I are the same way, where we'll overthink it and then we'll remind each other and be like, hold up, like sometimes it's not this serious. Like this might not even be on their radar because people are busy living their own lives and thinking about themselves, to be quite frank. Like it's when you're someone who overthinks about yourself and your situation and everything else. I think a lot of times you overthink everything, where like you're also overthinking, how are my friends doing, and how is this thing doing, and how is this doing? Like there's people that don't even figure out what they're like eating for lunch that day until they're like right in the moment, let alone thinking about how you're doing and how their other friend is doing and how all of this, like, so.
And I do think it's as a result of things that have happened in the last however many 30 years of life, or just
for sure
experiences and things like that. Because my mom does always tell me or bring up the story of how I made a friend at the electric parade in Disney World when I was 5 years old. And there's a photo of us with our glow sticks. But
exactly.
Yes.
And you probably just walked up to her and you were like, do you want to be my friend? And look at that. Exactly. That's how it goes. Well, thanks, gang. I don't think we have anything else. I think we could like powwow about friendship all day long, but I feel like we probably hit all of the big nails on the head. So hopefully this is helpful for everyone listening in, and be sure to request to join the crowd if you have not as of yet. Because what a perfect place where if you're just sitting there like, hey, I just want to message someone to be like, can we be friends? Because you seem kind of cool. You could do that in this community. So we'll put the link to the crowd in the show notes below. But thanks for joining me behind the mic, guys.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Loved it.
All right, y'all. This is a little unconventional, but Sarah and Taylor and I have been talking for, I don't know, 40 more minutes about all of this because we were really on a roll, and we have at least 2 more little quick tidbits to add here that like you can't not have. So Taylor, do you want to give the first one that you said that was like a total mic drop?
Yeah. Well, for my 30th birthday, I decided to let go of a little control for the first time in my life and let my husband plan a surprise birthday party for me. And leading up to it, I was worried about the time because I knew what time it was and it was an odd time to have a party. And I was worried about who wouldn't be there because I didn't know who RSVP'd and all of that. And I was sharing this with my boss leading up to the party, and she said, it's not about who isn't there. It matters who is there. So that really hit home with me because, yes, why I was a little disappointed at some people who weren't there, and I was a little sad, it made me really grateful for those that were.
Yeah.
So.
And we also said, if you are the one who is always reaching out, and that's you, and you relate to everything that we said in this episode about that, that's not a bad thing. And that's something important to remember. Like, if at the end of the day, you might be the first one to get hurt, or it might hurt a little bit more, or it might be a little harder, but being the first one to reach out says something good about you, and you can kind of rest easier in that's a positive trait about you as a friend. So you go, Glen Coco. That's our tidbits. Wait, before you go, make sure you're subscribed to never miss an episode of Thrive. Drop 5 stars on your way out if you like what you just listened to, and come join the party on Instagram at thrive.podcast to stay inspired and thriving all week long. Thanks for tuning in. It's your time to thrive.